All right, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar from Lux Research. We're going to be talking about a topic you might have been hearing a little bit about recently, GPT, generative AI, large language model, ChatGPT, and what it all means for innovation. So my name is Mike Holman. I'm a SVP for Research Programming here at Lux and moderating today's session and presenting GPT, Unpacking Generative AI's Impact on Innovation, will be our Senior Director, Anthony Schiavo. We will be taking questions throughout the webinar. There's a Q&A box on your screen. You can type those in at any time. We'll spend some time taking questions at the end, get to as many as we can, but if your question doesn't get answered or you think of a great one afterwards, feel free to email questions at luxresearchinc.com, and we'll get back to you on those too. So without any further delay, let me hand things over to Anthony to begin the presentation.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for joining me today. I want to start by taking it way back. This is a set of Napier's bones. This is a device from the 1500s that uses logarithms to take very complex multiplication division problems and turn them into addition and subtraction problems, which can then be solved with this set of tables. This device allowed the complex calculations of star charts and really played a pivotal role unlocking a new era of navigation that created the intersea exploration with all the positive and negative impacts of that age of exploration. And I think a lot of people are asking, is AI kind of like a new set of Napier's bones? Is it a new tool that is going to unlock a new age of exploration and discovery with positive and potentially some negative consequences? So that's what I want to dig into. I want to spend a pretty good amount of time just talking about what AI is and how it works. I think that's very important because there's so much hype and maybe misinformation or misunderstanding out there in the world. Then we're going to dig into AI's impact on innovation specifically. And last, leave with a few quick scenarios and implications for you and in your role as an innovator. So what is AI? Is it a set of math models? Is it a tool for automation? Or is it a source of new knowledge, right? Well, AIs are probabilistic tools. GPT-2 here, it uses next word probabilities to build sentences. And there's a degree of randomness baked into it, which you can see in the temperature chart here. That way, when you put in the same prompt, it doesn't always pick the next word. That randomness compounds, and that's how you get these different outputs. GPT-4 or ChatGPT is a lot more complex than this, but it works on similar principles. And these principles of probabilistic estimation really underlie almost every type of AI. The way they work is with a neural net, which is really just a visualization of a complex math problem. Each neuron represents a function that takes inputs and produces outputs. Those inputs are then multiplied by a weight and added to a constant and sent to other math functions. You can use these to estimate complex functions, like this complex function on the right. You can estimate it with a complex neural net. And what's important here is that you don't need to know anything about the function itself. You can estimate it just based on the output data. The way you do this is by training the neural net. If you want to recreate a function, you can give it examples and then adjust those weights, constants, and potentially even the functions themselves within the net to produce better and better results. This training is really at the core of what makes AI work, whether you're replicating this pretty simple function here, or you're replicating a much more complex function, like, for example, predicting which word comes next in a sequence. You need a lot of data to make this work, though. You can see that with 10 million examples, our estimation is pretty good. But with a million examples, it still leaves a lot to be desired. So all in, AIs are probabilistic tools trained on large amounts of data that can replicate the outputs of complex tasks. And this is true for very simple neural net-based systems and large language models, which are basically the biggest neural nets that it's currently possible to make, where you have billions of parameters and you're trained on trillions of data points. In this context, an AI company is the physical hardware needed to do this training and operation. It's the data, right? It's the actual models themselves, the nodes, the weights, the constants. And it's also the human labor and know-how. And different companies have different elements of all of these, where some companies are really focusing just on the physical hardware, an Nvidia, right? They're an AI company in that context. Some companies are just working on the data. And then at some point, theoretically underlying all of this, you'll have AI products. But I'd argue we're still at pretty early stages of that. But AI is not just a set of math models. It's also a tool that mediates human labor, right? It changes the way we do knowledge tasks by automating, fragmenting, deskilling, and casualizing that work. If you think about the assembly line, that took manual labor from a very craftsman, bespoke process to something that anyone could learn to do in a few weeks. The gig economy, services like Uber, took something like being a cab driver, and they automated and simplified, de-skilled a lot of those elements, right? Hailing the taxi, finding your way around, all the elements of payment, all of that was automated. And so AI is really the next frontier of that. It's going to bring this automation, fragmentation, de-skilling, and casualization to knowledge labor roles, whether that's marketing development or R&D or potentially, tech scouting. But AI is also the product of a huge amount of labor, right? Training the data, tagging data, managing this, making sure the outputs aren't hostile, toxic, racist. All of this requires a huge amount of human labor. And it is primarily being used today, exploited labor, right? OpenAI has used Kenyan workers. There's a ton of prison labor that's been used. There's been digital sweatshops opened in the Philippines. So AI is very much a way of transforming that labor into a sort of a capital cost, right? A finished model that can then be used repeatedly. But I would also argue that AI is a source of new knowledge, right? AI, and this is really crucial, you don't need to understand the problem or the function in order to make a working AI model of it, right? Whether that's a material system, you don't need to necessarily perfectly understand the theory of the property structure relationships, or something like a human speech. We don't have a perfect theory of human speech, right? But we're able to make these models that can predict outcomes successfully. This goes back as far as 2016. Some of the earliest work done in the material space on half-Husler compounds. The point I would make is that, I spoke to the CTO of Cabot in 2019, and she said that when companies started to use materials informatics, they're often resistant. But instead of actually producing materials that they didn't understand, what happened was the AI systems would make predictions. The scientists wouldn't fully understand them, and then they would go and chase down a theory of knowledge, right? That's what scientists do. So in practice, the use of AI tools actually accelerated their understanding of material systems. So when we think about AI as a set of mathematical models, a tool for automation, a source of new knowledge, it's really all of these things. And we need to keep that all in mind as we think about AI applications in the innovation ecosystem. Okay. I've thrown a lot at you already, but I'm going to keep throwing more stuff at you. So, let's just buckle up and let's focus on AI's impact on innovation here, right? This is a very simplified innovation funnel, starting with the insight stage, basic R&D, trend identification, the top of the funnel, working our way through ideation and brainstorming, future state forecasting, technical modeling, innovator mapping, pilot formation, partnership formation, and then down into the optimization and marketing when you're really having launched and are scaling up in innovation. There's a role for AI to play in all of these. R&D can benefit a lot from creativity and from the automation of knowledge work. This is a great example from Omar Yagi, who's a leading professor in the metal organic framework space. They used OpenAI tools, ChatGPT, to both help PhDs write code, even though they didn't have any coding experience, and then also to basically read, filter a large number of academic journals, pull out the synthesis instructions of the metal organic frameworks, and then build a database with those synthesis instructions presented in a sort of a tabulated step-by-step form. So I'd emphasize here that this combination of AI-assisted workflow, it really does require a plan and a structured approach. And the AI is very useful in specific tasks like processing a large amount of information or providing code examples or creating code, but it's not useful for every single sort of task within this. And again, having a specific workflow is really important. You can't just ask ChatGPT to tell you how to make a metal organic framework. A similar example is actually some of the work that Lux's Motive AI uses. We use GPT as an interpretation layer, essentially feeding a large amount of contextual data, everything from social media to news articles, a wide range of other sources, and asking GPT to apply pretty established anthropological methodologies to interpret that body of text. What I'd emphasize again here is that we're taking a very established methodology. The anthropology at work is in some ways not that unique. What's really unique is the scale and the scope of the data that we can process by training the OpenAI tool to do our specific methodology. Moving down the innovation framework into more of a validation layer or validation step. Large language models, they can really help produce technical and financial models. But again, having a structured methodology really, really helps here. You can ask generic questions like, hey, ChatGPT, I need to make a model of a fermentation. And if you do that, you're going to get some pretty generic responses back out. But if you go in with a specific structured question, if you go in asking for, specific structured outputs, such as code, and if you are referencing established approaches, established models, established techniques, you can get much more better results, and you can get much faster results, especially for innovation professionals who maybe don't have the skill set in coding or don't have the skill set in these analytical frameworks. It can be really valuable to leverage ChatGPT in particular or any large language model, I should say, to move towards these types of sort of advanced techniques for modeling or data processing. And in addition, large language models can write code that can interface with physical systems, right? So in this paper here that I'm referencing on the right, you can see that they used ChatGPT to improve additive manufacturing. What they did is they gave it examples of G code, which is the machine code that controls a 3D printer. And they actually said, okay, look at this code, tell us what's wrong with it, compare it to some working code examples, and then modify the code in order to make it better. And you can see that ChatGPT was able to do that. They then asked ChatGPT to actually produce code from scratch to, produce functioning working parts, and it was able to do that as well. what's important, I think, to recognize here is that these large language models really represent generalized knowledge models. The ability to produce meaningful text, whether that's human language text or structured code, means that these models can produce and reproduce human knowledge. So they represent a very generalizable kind of tool that can tackle a very wide range of different knowledge tasks because there's so much information and so much power baked into just the structures of either human language or code. In addition, code is really the interface between the human and machine world. And that ability to produce code allows these tools to be very powerful and to have really an immediate and direct impact here. But again, a structured approach is really important. Giving the large language model existing code examples, asking it to improve them, that's going to be a lot better and produce much better results in the initial term than just trying to do something from scratch from the start. So across all these examples, you can see that structured methodologies are really important for interacting with large language models. Large language models have the opportunity to really accelerate the capabilities of a lot of innovation tasks. And large language models represent a kind of generalizable knowledge model that's quite flexible. As a result, we're beginning to see a pretty wide range of companies proliferating to bring AI into innovation. And here, I'm really looking at more recently founded companies, companies using specifically large language models. There's a whole range of companies using machine learning approaches, other AI tools. Companies like Citrine Informatics have been trying to do AI and successfully bringing AI to innovation for years already. So in a sense, this isn't anything new. What's really interesting and exciting is the proliferation of this sort of large language model based platforms that are very specifically targeted at different tasks within the innovation funnel. So you can see there's data management platforms, there's scouting approaches where they're using large language models to scrape and build profiles of companies and identify companies on the internet. For the purposes of being unbiased, I have not included the logo of Lux Research Incorporated on any of these slides. But of course, we are very active. I already showed one of our examples, and there's a lot more stuff we're working on in-house along these lines. And there's even, some of these venture firms where they have a AI analyst who is making recommendations about which companies they should invest in. So there's a lot of stuff happening. But I think it's worth asking a question. Where will this stuff actually stick? Where will it be adopted? And where is it going to create value? You can use an AI tool to do a lot of different things. But clearly, there's a lot of hype in the market right now. People are trying a lot of stuff. They're throwing a lot of stuff at the wall. Where is it going to create value? So there's two frameworks I want to introduce. The first, I want to think about adoption. Where is it going to be adopted? And I think about this in terms of immediate cost savings. Is the AI going to be immediately cost saving or immediately cost increasing? And then is it going to be immediately performance increasing or immediately performance reducing? Is it going to be good right out the box, or is it going to struggle? Now, my team and I have mapped a ton of different applications on this framework. There's a couple I want to call out. One is information extraction, right? This is almost immediately going to be a cost-saving and performance-increasing application of AI because it's quite straightforward to train AIs to summarize, to digest, to pull out specific elements of large amounts of data, whether that's academic papers, patents, you name it. So there's clearly a lot of opportunity within this information extraction, both to save costs compared to hiring someone to read papers, and both to rapidly increase the numbers that you can really sort through and scan and identify. Something like basic R&D, though, is actually cost increasing. And that may seem a little counterintuitive, but the reality is if you want to build AI systems to actually assist in the core tasks of R&D, that requires a lot of investment upfront. You need to invest in data digitization. You need to invest in possibly some, data hardware to actually store and keep that data proprietary. You need to probably hire people to either build custom systems or hire a third party to actually help you implement, this AI in your R&D process. So it's definitely performance increasing. We see a lot of potential benefits of using using AI in R&D, and certainly groups like Citrine have developed a very strong value proposition there. But it's definitely something that represents an additional cost just for now. And no small part of the reason of that is that it's difficult to, or I would not recommend, firing people, reducing headcount, right? Because that's really where the cost savings come from. So since it's not really possible to do that in the R&D space just yet, it really represents a cost increase in addition to a performance increase. Something like marketing or brainstorming, I think, is actually in that performance reducing sector. Same thing with partnership formation. Yeah, it's possible to, use an AI to go out and pitch startups on partnerships, but those are really tasks that require a human element, whether that's a human to human connection or, a human's insight about the future of, different trends and a human's understanding of what really important and what the context. So these types of things are still, I think, a pretty long way away from being really meaningful. But that doesn't mean people are going to do them, especially in something like marketing. You can definitely save costs by reducing headcount and use an AI to produce your marketing materials. It might be much worse, but you can do it. But none of this says anything about value, right? We've been talking a lot about automation, and I've mentioned, okay, we can automate labor and we can save costs that way. But, productivity growth has been very consistent through the digital revolution. Automation has consistently increased, our productivity maybe 2% a year in the global economy. But a lot of the labor that we're automating is not productive, right? It's things like marketing, where it's not directly serving products to clients. And so there's not a huge amount of value to necessarily be gained by automating that labor. I would propose an additional or a different type of value, which is the knowledge value, right? Going back to our early example of neural nets, these can replicate the test data, but they can also produce very different results outside of the test data. And this ability for neural nets to expand on the training data means that they can be used to make predictions, and those predictions can expand or challenge human understanding. This ability to accelerate human understanding is really potentially very valuable in specific applications. And so we can map, again, our knowledge value here on this vertical axis against our automation value. There are some applications like human diagnostics where it's really valuable to do both, right? There's a really significant automation value in, automating cancer diagnostics, for example, because that requires really, really skilled, really, really expensive labor. And you can potentially bring that type of diagnostic capability to developing economies or much more broadly if you can automate it. But there's also knowledge value. If you can develop an AI system that very accurately predicts, cancer at a very early stage, I don't think scientists are just going to leave that be. Even if the AI system itself remains a black box, that capability is definitely going to lead us to greater understanding of, cancer precursors, right? Any type of disease diagnostic. So the capability of the AI system is going to actually drive human knowledge. And that's going to be really valuable in applications like diagnostics, like drug discovery, even in something like coding. But you look at R&D, materials discovery. This is this core R&D is really going to be very impacted, I think, by the advent of AI, because there is such a value attached to the theory of knowledge that you can generate from it. It's also possible even that some of the economics, better economic models or better venturing models could be accelerated by the use of AI. So there's a lot of different opportunities to accelerate the knowledge within the innovation space, and that's going to be quite valuable. There's also opportunities for automation, right? In coding, model building, potentially startup scouting. I think these are, pretty medium, but there's definitely some automation value to be had there. The things that are sort of at the lowest end of automation value, knowledge value, are things like data management, where we don't necessarily need a new theory of knowledge in order to really accelerate our process there. So, to sort of sum up, AI is going to be adopted where it's cheap and easy, but the long-term impact is going to come from these high knowledge, high labor roles where it's going to generate the most amount of value. Okay. I want to pivot and step back a little bit. We've talked a lot about concrete tasks, R&D, data management, development of synthesis routes, everything from modeling to scouting. I want to look at some of the broader scenarios and the broader implications. The big one that I really want to advance to you is that fundamental R&D has a big potential for impact. The nature of the work itself could really be substantially disrupted, right? I think we've been shifting from this very complex theory-driven R&D, where your leading lights would generate a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, and that would be based on their understanding of the world. Instead, I think we're going to come at it backwards, where we're going to test a huge amount of things, and the goal will be to generate as much useful data as possible, right? The task itself will be very simplified. Most of the work of R&D might just be interfacing with automated systems, whether that's an automated knowledge system like a AI or an automated physical system like a high throughput testing machine. And then the role of the PhD will be to develop a theory based on the predictions and based on the real world testing of that AI, and to pick the direction for the R&D testing to move. It'll be much more strategic, and this will open up the labor pool to much less educated folks. There'll be a lot more roles and opportunities potentially for a much wider range of different folks to do R&D. And this could really change the nature, the construction of the labor force within the innovation space. Companies are going to have to, in the long term, change how they staff, right? In the near term, I think it'll be focused on more upscaling staff, building small task forces, testing out some of these new methodologies, but probably not. My advice would be to not break the bank or to radically revise org charts. But in the long term, there is going to be a much different structure in play. I think outsourcing will be a lot more possible, especially of these, this data generation or these testing roles, right? You'll still need experts and theorists, but like I said, that is going to be tied a lot more to R&D management, long-term strategy than it will be to having the best theorists, the best fundamental chemists, right? That role will occupy a smaller space in the workforce. But I do want to leave some caveats as well. I have a whole section on this, and I could spend an hour talking about it, but it's quite likely that AI can fail to improve, right? There's a ton of limitations on data availability, model quality. We can't just necessarily keep doubling compute every 6 months forever. We can't keep doubling the data consumption, every 6 months. So there's a lot of ways in which, the AIs themselves could fail to improve. I think even the AI models we have today are going to be pretty impactful, but a lot of folks say, "Oh, AGI is just around the corner." No, it's not. Like we're still pretty far away from that. And I would also emphasize we don't really know what the cost benefit of AI is. They're really, really expensive, hundreds of millions of dollars to train. And there's no business model that currently supports that costs. Companies like OpenAI are burning huge amounts of cash. And the material basis needed to support large language models is really, really tremendous. It's a huge amount of energy, a huge amount of material, chips, water, you name it, right? So we really have no idea what a profitable AI or a profitable large language model. I mean, there are profitable AI businesses, I should say, but there's no profitable large language model business. So, you know, one thing that could happen, I think is actually very likely, is that these services get worse over time or stagnate in terms of their performance because they are going to be tied to the realities of actually turning a profit. So I just want to leave you with a few key takeaways, right? AI, it's going to change the labor force, but um, we are going to see some near-term impacts, especially in product development, especially in marketing. But the real impact in the long term is going to be R&D. I really think fundamental R&D, the way we generate knowledge, the way we arrive at new theories of knowledge, is going to be pretty radically changed. But there will be impacts across innovation, everything from scouting to model building, and I think the biggest risk today is from overreacting or acting with the expectation that AI will solve every problem and create a utopia, right? So people need to have a plan. You need to have a posture. You need to have a strategy, but don't overcommit, whether that's financial resources or changing your headcount, changing your work structure. This is going to take a lot of time to really mediate the labor that we do in the innovation space, and really transform the role of innovation and the structure of innovation. So prepare for that, but don't overcommit. And with that, I want to just say thank you, and we can open it up for a couple questions.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. And yeah, a lot of food for thought and a lot of good questions about it as well. So you talked about this changing R&D and even shifting the composition of the R&D workforce, right? And making the analogy with the assembly line manufacturing techniques, right? Assembly line manufacturing led to a huge increase in manufacturing productivity. Do you think this is going to lead over the next couple of decades to a similarly huge increase in R&D productivity and the rate of innovation?
I definitely think it could. I think it will drive down the cost of a lot of certain types of innovation. Stuff like formulation development, custom, like customer-centric R&D in that way. That should get a lot cheaper, right? And it should be a lot more feasible to customize materials for smaller and smaller applications, right? The big question
product
is if
development,
it will,
big D, small R sort of stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, big D, small R stuff. That will definitely get a lot more productive. I feel quite confident in that. The big question is if we can get a lot more productive in like inventing new materials, whole classes, right? That, type of productivity has actually been slowing down in a certain sense. We have fewer and fewer big material breakthroughs. We invented polymers maybe 100 years ago at this point, and we haven't had a huge breakthrough in material classes since then. It's definitely possible, though. You could see, everything from metal organic frameworks to high entropy alloys, all of these classes of materials that have been sort of theorized, but actually figuring them out has been really difficult. Like, all that could be really radically accelerated by this. But to me, that's much more of an open question, or a lot less certain.
Yeah. So you talked a bit about, the impacts of this and for good and for ill. What are some of the things? I mean, you mentioned you don't think that AGI coming to kill everybody and erase humanity is something you're all that worried about, I guess. But what are the things that do worry you as sort of a downside risk from AI?
So I'll answer this in two ways. For companies, the downside risk is that you overestimate the capacity and the capability of AI, and you degrade the quality of your product, and you end up losing a lot of institutional knowledge because you fire people, right? You say, all right, we're going to replace all of our marketing team with AI, and you fire all your marketing team, and the marketing is garbage, right? It stinks. Everyone can recognize AI generated images. This becomes a pretty simple thing, and it reduces the value. All that marketing that you do becomes totally valueless and meaningless, and you sort of lose the capacity to do marketing, right? So for companies, the risk is very much to degrade the quality of your product, right? To degrade the quality of whatever it is you're doing, whether that's marketing or R&D innovation. For society, I think the risks are there's a few. One, labor is a big risk, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think the reality is, like, if you go to a corporate person or CEO, whoever, and you say, what if we replaced your marketing team with a group of, prisoners in Kenya who are being exploited and not being paid? They would say, that's terrible. We're not going to do that. Like, we're not going to do that on moral grounds, right? But if you go to them and say, we're going to use an AI to do your marketing, they're like, wow, yeah, that sounds super exciting. Even though those are the same thing in a very, very practical sense, the same structures are exactly in place. The same material outcomes are happening for the people. So one negative consequence of AI is that it allows companies to essentially conceal a significant amount of exploitation that otherwise would be unacceptable or unpalatable, right? So that's one negative consequence. Another one is, if you look at Uber, right? If you look at all the digital innovations, blockchain, Uber, they're all essentially based on their ability to do crimes, right? Like, Uber operated illegally for a long time in many jurisdictions. Bitcoin, it's all about operating illegally, right? In the context of securities regulations. And so in the context of patent or IP, there's a lot of opportunity for AI. There's this lawsuit right now with the New York Times against OpenAI where, they say, it's demonstrated that OpenAI can reproduce whole segments of New York Times articles, right? So, it's entirely possible that AI tools lead to a breakdown of, or lead to a lot of criminality in terms of IP law or in terms of, phishing, digital rights, you name it. There's a ton of ways that, these tools can just be exploited in that way. And then the third thing I will just say is misinformation, right? Already we're seeing the internet fill up with AI generated garbage, right? Slop. You can't trust it's, Google results, right? You can't trust a lot of news. I've discovered all these innovation news sites now that are popping up that are just purely AI generated. So, it can make the job of the innovator much harder to actually gather accurate information. And I think person-to-person communication, whether that's interviews or meetings, conferences, is going to be a lot more valuable in that context.
You can't trust that video of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson offering you a Medicaid deal, which is a real AI generated scam that was in the news last
the Louvre
week.
burning or whatever, all sorts of criminality and scams.
Maybe one last real quick question. You talked about this kind of from the perspective of an R&D organization. Like, if you're an individual, say maybe especially early mid-career type of person working in an R&D innovation type role, like, what should you be doing to kind of prepare yourself for this future? Do you go to MIT Extension and take an AI course, or do you what are the sort of things that you think about as preparing yourself?
I don't think taking an AI course is a good idea. I think if AI improves over the next decade, I think the way it will improve will be becoming a lot more usable, right? A lot easier to use and a lot, easier to eliminate hallucinations and stuff, right? It's going to become user friendly. So I don't think taking an AI course that teaches you how to use the crappy tools we have today is going to prepare you to use the powerful tools we have in 10 years, right? Or the user friendly tools. I think AI will improve that way, and I think that's a lot more likely than it improving in a becoming 10 times more powerful, type of way. Yeah. So I think the thing to do is either go deep on science and become one of those PhDs, right? Who who can really interpret the results, right? Build that type of organization, or become really fluent, I think, in building workflows and leveraging AI. And in that context, I think it's more about the stuff outside the AI, like how do I structure data? How do I get access to it? How do I interpret results from AI? How do I leverage that into an actual person's workflow rather than like, how do I interface with the AI directly?
All right. Well, thanks, Anthony, for all the insights, and thanks to everybody out there for joining us today. This concludes the webinar. We will send the slide presentation recording to all the attendees by email. After you leave the webinar, you will get prompted to fill in a survey. We really appreciate if you can just take a quick moment to do that. We really use that feedback to try to inform and improve future webinars. And of course, we've got some other great ones coming up, so continue to check out the Future of Aviation on February 8th, or follow us on these social channels to keep up to date with all the other upcoming events.
Yep.
Thanks again, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.